KW Krieger presents The Obscura Dossier, Episode 17, The House on High Street.
I'm telling you, what I saw was real. I'm not crazy.
Okay. Sit down, take a breath. Let's begin. Statement of Gareth Elwood, Investigative Assistant here at Oracle, within the Vault for Esoteric and Irregular Lore, otherwise known as Veil, filed 29th of August, 2025, regarding his investigation into Dr. Claire Lansing, following her statement dated 24th of June, 2025. Statement taken directly from subject. Statement begins.
So, you know I was assigned to follow up on Dr. Lansing after her claim. I'm aware the preliminary follow-up team failed to make contact. She wouldn't answer phone calls. All the letters we sent were returned or ignored. I believe 3 months had passed since her statement, and whatever urgency there'd been had settled into that uneasy space between low priority and still worth keeping an eye on. My first stop was the South Bank Institute of Botanical Sciences, where she'd been working for over a decade. It was one of those big, glass-fronted, immaculate-looking buildings that carried the soft smell of damp soil and disinfectant lingering in the air. At the front desk, the receptionist told me she'd taken an indefinite leave shortly after returning from Anta. No one had seen her since. Her colleagues were guarded. The head of research said she'd left multiple projects incomplete. Said she had unfinished documentation and specimens that were abandoned mid-study. One of the junior researchers, I believe his name was Jeremy, mentioned she'd been on edge in those final days at the Institute, jumping at sudden noises, glancing over her shoulder like she expected something to be there. Just a general sense of paranoia. With permission from her superiors, I checked her office. It had been stripped bare. No personal items, no papers, nothing at all. There was left a single battered notebook filled with lists of Latin plant names, some violently crossed out, others circled over and over. The weird thing is, there were no notes. No explanation as to what she was doing, or why. From the Institute, I headed to a listed address on file. It was a quiet residential on High Street Gardens. You know, the sort those narrow, 2-story units, blocks, each with a single driveway barely wide enough for one car, shared awkwardly between 3 or 4 households. Yeah, it was one of those. Lansing's unit sat at the far end, partly hidden behind an overgrown hedge spilling across the driveway. The garden looked as if no one had touched it in months. Which was odd, you know, considering her profession. For someone who spent her life among plants and flowers, you'd expect the front of her home to be immaculate. Maybe even a point of pride. Instead, the flower beds were a tangled mess of weeds. The ivy had claimed the mailbox entirely, and a few cracked pots lay half buried in the soil. You know, it was really strange. It just felt off, walking up to her house. I remember slowing my pace without meaning to, like my body knew something my head didn't. It wasn't fear exactly, more like the sense you get when you've wandered somewhere you don't belong. I could have sworn I was being watched, and every step forward felt unwelcome. The front door was cracked open just a bit, enough that I could see a sliver of the hallway inside. It was dark. Still, I pushed it the rest of the way. That's when the smell hit me. Damp, wet dirt left too long in a bag, and under that, something sweet, but not a nice way. More like fruit that's been sitting out in the heat, just on the edge of going bad. I stepped inside, and right away the air hit me. Thick, heavy. I don't know if it was the weather that day or just the house itself, but it felt wrong. Humid in a way that made my shirt stick to my back, like walking into a greenhouse with no ventilation. Within a minute, I could feel the sweat running down my temple. The place looked abandoned. There was this faint dust on everything that wasn't a plant, like no one had touched it in a long while. The fridge was plugged in, but when I checked it, the food inside was well past expired. Milk separated into layers, fruit furred over in mold. And then there were the plants, everywhere. On shelves, on the floor, hanging from the ceiling. Some in pots, others just in piles of soil like they'd been pulled straight from the ground and left there. I didn't touch any of them. Not after what I'd read in her file. There was this faint, sickly scent coming from toward where I assumed the basement to be. It was different to the smells of rotting fruit and the general botanical scents that permeated through the air. This was like a soft perfume. It was the only nice scent amongst the overwhelming filth so naturally it bore my curiosity. I know. Bad idea, generally speaking. But if I was going to find any answers, that might have explained where Claire had disappeared to. Unfortunately, following this scent into the basement was the only place that would have given me the answers I was looking for. The stairway was one of those old wooden, narrow stairwells that went straight down into an engulfing pit of black. Ironically, the lights down there didn't work, so my source of light was entirely made up of whatever light stretched down the stairway from upstairs and my phone's flashlight. I felt incredibly uneasy walking down those stairs. Like every step I took, my knees buckled slightly. My stomach churned. When I hit the bottom, I just stopped. The whole basement was full. Not just with potted plants like upstairs, but roots, vines and moss. Covering the floor, crawling up the walls, hanging from the ceiling. I couldn't see where some of them began or ended. They weren't just in the soil. They were coming out of the cracks in the floor, bursting through old cement, even winding their way through the frame of the stairs I'd just walked down. There had to be hundreds of different plants down there. Flowers I recognized, others I didn't. Some in full bloom, others half dead and wilting. It was like someone had tried to fit a whole rainforest into that concrete box. I picked my way forward, careful not to step on anything alive, which was almost impossible. There were plants underfoot, soft and wet. The air felt heavy in my chest, thick with that sweet smell that had been clinging to the whole house. Then I saw it. At first, I thought it was just another plant, a big one, half hidden in the tangle of vines, but as my eyes adjusted, I realized there was a shape to it. A body. It wasn't fully human, not anymore. The skin was mottled green and brown, patchy, splitting in places where bark had pushed through. The arms were just slack at its sides, hands lost in the roots around it, where its hair should have been flowers bloomed in tight clusters. Petals trembling like they were caught in a breeze I couldn't feel. I must have made a sound, stepped wrong. Maybe my breath caught too loud because that thing's head just jerked towards me. Not slow, not curious, just snapped. Like it had been waiting. I don't remember thinking. I don't even remember turning. All I know is the next second I was bolting up those stairs, taking 3 at a time. My shoulder slammed into the wall, my lungs burning. I didn't look back. I hit the top of the stairs and just stopped. My chest was heaving. Sweat just pouring down my face. I pressed my hand to the wall, trying to get my breathing under control, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. I could hear something below. It was not footsteps. Not movement exactly. More like the sound of soil shifting, like roots dragging through the dirt. Or more the sound of when you drag something heavy and sharp through the soil. A crunchy wet sound, but it was heavier. Every instinct in me screamed to get out. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at the open stairwell, feeling the damp air rolling up from below like the house was alive. Then I caught it. A faint rustle. It sounded almost like leaves brushing against each other. But there was weight to it, like it was coming closer up the stairwell. I saw what I could have sworn was a huge, cruel smile in the darkness amongst the leaves. It was her. I know it was. I don't know how, but there's no other explanation. That was enough. I turned and I left. I didn't close the door. I didn't look back. I just ran straight into the daylight. Made my way back here. Obviously, you know the rest when you saw me, shaking quite literally like a leaf.
Statement ends. Follow-up investigation into the residence of Dr. Claire Lansing was conducted the morning after this statement. The property was found locked, and visual inspection through front windows revealed no sign of the plant growth described by Mr. Elwood. Interior access was not possible at the time due to legal restrictions. Claire Lansing remains missing, and no additional sightings or confirmed movements have been reported since the date of her original statement. The Botany Research Institute where she was employed confirms her extended absence, but could provide no further information. Recommendation for further fieldwork is pending clearance. However, in light of the descriptions provided, caution is strongly advised for any personnel entering the property. Location is to remain under discreet surveillance until further notice. End recording. The Obscure Dossier is a podcast created by K.W. Krieger, licensed under a Creative Commons Non-Attribution Non-Share-alike 4.0 international license. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow us on Reddit at The Obscure Dossier, like us on Facebook, and as always, thanks for listening.